What is the state of psychological health and safety from the perspective of those treating both the organization and the individuals in the organization? We'll dive into this topic with some returning guests who are up close and personal in dealing with individuals and organizations' psychological health and safety. Up next on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So, organizational therapeutic psychology isn't a widely recognized term. It's a bit of a mashup between therapy and psychology applied to organizations. Individual therapy focuses on helping a single person navigate personal challenges, emotions, and mental health concerns. It provides a private, one-on-one setting where a therapist tailors interventions to the individual's specific needs, focused on self-awareness, developing coping strategies, and promoting emotional healing. On the other hand, organizational therapy applies to psychological principles to improve workplace dynamics, communication, and overall organizational health. It addresses systemic issues such as leadership effectiveness, team collaboration, and workplace stress. It's aimed to create a psychologically safe and productive work environment. Organizational therapy focuses on improving workplace culture and performance. It applies psychological principles to diagnose and treat organizational issues, much like therapy for individuals, but on a larger scale. It examines organizational relationships, processes, and structures to create a healthier work environment. Individuals who attend therapy often do so as a result of the organization with which they're involved. Conversely, organizations that are trying to thrive are often limited by the challenges that individuals present to organizations. So in this episode, we're going to discuss the state of organizational therapy from two perspectives. And I've have the pleasure of returning guests from episodes 9, 24, and 132. They're back, and some of them are meeting for the first time here. I like to do that. Sometimes I meet people for the first time. Sometimes they meet people for the first time. But we're just going to have a conversation for the next few moments about the intersection or the connection between healthy people and healthy organizations. So let's start off with an introduction of my guest by my guest. And I've got three of them, so I've got to do this three times. So first of all, who is Georgia Bryce-Hutchinson?
Georgia Bryce-Hutchinson, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also get to do some work with organizations as a workplace mental health consultant and trainer. I have been in the environment in the field since 2016, but prior to me coming into therapy, I was an environmental engineer. And sometimes I joke because I'm not sure if I moved from the dark side to the bright side. But I do have an opportunity. I've come full circle somewhat because the people I would interface with as an environmental engineer, I worked in that arena for over 9 years. I get to come back and interface with the same groups of people, except now from a mental health perspective. I have been able to engage different forums, presenting as a technical speaker at conferences or a keynote speaker on all things mental health. And I'm very passionate about workplace mental health in particular because, as you know, Dr. Daniels, a lot of our people who come in to see us for therapy are dealing with workplace or vocational stress. And so going into the business arena, being able to have these kind of conversations and do training and consulting is a very important part of what I do. And I really, really enjoy.
Thank you so much. And looking forward to more that you'll have to share. So next on the hit parade. So who is Dr. Andrew Holter?
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. Georgia has a pretty interesting background there. Um, I am an organizational psychologist by academic background now, and but prior to that, I was a firefighter paramedic, and kind of coming up through the ranks, and also did some safety aligned type of work, and so it kind of really helps, I think, create a broader perspective, to have that sort of application like you have, Georgia, to see things that way. And you probably got to where you are today. It may be in a specific way, like I did, through just kind of a quest of trying to understand why organizations operate the way they do, or why the people in them kind of get stuck sometimes in these sort of traps, we'll call them. And that's really kind of what motivated me to go down this road into organizational psychology. And so now, I get to work with organizations, trying to help them overcome those burdens and challenges as an organizational psychologist, which is just as fulfilling as my work was, as a firefighter paramedic, but it's just a much different perspective now, and trying to help those people do their best work in those organizations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, more to chat, or more to come from Dr. Andy. I think I just kind of made that up for you, but anyway. And also joining us today is someone we had the opportunity to both meet and have on a podcast recently. Who is Mat Jeanius?
Mat Jeanius. I think I'm 132, correct? 132. I made it. I made it. Mat Jeanius. Who am I? I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'll start there because that's where we started with our career, but I am so much more. What I'd like to tell people now is that I'm a programmer of brains, or a reprogrammer for some. And what I mean by that is where I specialize is where I love to program. I specialize in Black male wellness and relational intimacy. So each opportunity I have to be on a platform like this and say that I specialize in Black male wellness, what it is a code for me to then be a beacon for Black men to hear and understand that they have someone there for them. Because it's known that Black men are underserved when it comes to mental health, not just because of the stigmas associated with it, but also because there aren't a lot of Black men in the field, or Black individuals in the field. I think we're less than 4%. Is it less than 4%, Georgia? Right? So underserved, reported. There's so many different areas that could be stressed as far as Black male wellness. And so I'm also a director for a retreat for men of color. It's called Race Realities. We go twice a year. We went in May, and we're going back. When I say go, we go to Costa Rica, right? We leave the country for 7 days, and we provide a retreat for Black men to discuss their wellness mentally, physically, spiritually, and so forth. We eat healthy, and when we come back a better self. And so I do that as well. I'm also a children's author. I wrote several books. And so when I say reprogram, I use as many avenues as I can to help reprogram Black and brown individuals' brains.
Totally, totally. So, as you can see, we have a rather eclectic gathering of people. I have the honor of being able to know all of you and to know all of your work, and to be inspired by all of your work, because ultimately, the thing that I do as an occupational safety and health guy is to try to limit the need to have to see you all, but there's no way in the world it can all be fixed. It can't be, because some of the challenges that people are facing have nothing to do with work. Some of them have to do with their backgrounds and their upbringing and the things that they've been exposed to outside of work. And so I believe there's always going to be a need for folks to have therapy. And I am so thankful that I had the opportunity to, I've had 4 therapists that I can recall. And all of them, each of them kind of built on the last. And I would not be, I would certainly not be the person that I am today, but would not be able to live the life that I live today had I not had the opportunity to have some conversation, to get some stuff, and again, as Andrew mentioned, the life of a firefighter, and in my case, a fire chief and all, it's got some issues that go along with it that don't get talked about a lot. I talk about some of this in my book as well. That they prepared me really well to go into buildings on fire, but not really well to deal with all the emotions associated with all the other stuff. I mean that and again, I don't think that's different from a lot of occupations where they look out for really talented people, top talent and all that type of thing. Then they bring them into an environment that I'm not really prepared for. And when our brains aren't prepared for things, our brain is basically a big association maker. It's trying to make association between what's I'm perceiving now and what's stored in the memory banks. Because, if you think about it, your brain doesn't have eyes. It's connected to eyes. It doesn't have ears. It's connected to ears. It's in this dark, box called, or this dark globe called your skull. And it relies on all this feedback information. And some of that feedback comes in all kinds of really interesting ways, and it really affects the way that we behave. So again, all of you have had opportunity to be on the podcast as long as a couple of years ago, as most recently as earlier this year. And I'm wondering, have your views on psychological health and safety in total, have they evolved? And so I'll start, Andrew, with you, because you were the guest that was on the earliest. So do you think your thoughts about psychological health and safety in general have evolved over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would definitely say they've evolved and sort of been reaffirmed. I have been in a couple different environments. We have a much different political landscape today as well. And through all of that, and I've had the opportunity to travel a lot recently and work with a lot of public safety agencies. And so I have just seen the void that is this concept throughout the entire country in multiple different organizations, and the need. When I was first on the show, it was a while ago. It was like 2 years ago, and in my worldview, that seems like a really long time ago. And I have children to kind of gauge time by, so young children, so it moves even extra quick. But just in that amount of time, I think my views really evolved to see how much need there is and how imperative this is and impactful it is to individuals all over and in organizations of every size, every shape, and every origin, that this is a key construct, a foundational piece that's really necessary if people are going to come to work the way we really would like for them to, and be able to do the great work that we're hoping that they can accomplish when they're there.
Right. Absolutely. So Georgia and Matt, something he didn't share, and I didn't necessarily share, but I'll share now. I had the honor of having Andrew as a student in his master's program back in the day, and I don't honestly. I remember some of the students, but not all of them. But I just remembered him because he had just an interesting way of presenting himself through his papers, because we never really met in person. It was a kind of an online kind of program, and there's just something about this guy. He's got some really interesting ideas, and who knows that he become who he's become today, which I'm really proud of him to have had that interaction. So Matt, what are your thoughts? What's evolved in your thinking around just the concept of psychological health and safety at work?
Yes, this idea is fairly new for me, right? But then when I go back and assess a lot of what I've learned with my history personally, and then a lot of the clients that I've seen, I then can see a trend that's very vivid. There is a trend for Black males having higher levels of depression now, or even more prevalent is suicide in Black men. And so sometimes what we do as therapists is that we examine the family system and we examine, other systems, but sometimes we forget about the societal system, which includes work, which includes, microaggression, which includes racism, which includes a lot of things. But what it made me think about is how the shift in my wellness occurred when I went from working for an institution that didn't really value my psychological health and safety, and the improvements that I saw in my wellness when I started my own practice. And I felt it almost immediately, the availability that I had for myself and then from my children, and then that wellness that I was experiencing then kind of became a domino effect in my family, and my family received so much as a result of it. And so now I'm thinking about, these men who choose to be absent from this world, meaning they completed suicide. And I'm thinking about the ecosystem around them. Could it have been too much to manage as what we think about fathers and men as being the protector and provider? Could it have been too much for them to manage, not succeeding in the way they would like to succeed, and yet having to come home and manage that again? So the stresses go both ways. And now it allows me to approach my clients in a different way to make sure that they're advocating and aware of how to make sure that they're taking care of their mental wellness with the work that they have, with the responsibilities they have outside the house and inside the house. And so it definitely triggered something in me to pay more attention to myself and the wellness I'm experiencing because I pay attention, and then offer that to my clients as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Georgia, your thoughts. Again, not only we've been on the podcast, we've had opportunity to be at some, the same conferences and such. As a matter of fact, we met at a conference. And so how have your views around this concept of psychological health and safety kind of evolved?
It certainly has for me. I think it's almost the lens through which I see everything at this particular point in time, especially when working with clients, just like what Matt says. Um, it's become more amplified, right? When I have to work with those clients who again are dealing with work-related stress, it's almost like the list of psychosocial hazards are literally in my mind, because I could tick things off that these individuals are dealing with. And it's not just clients, just friends, just interfacing with friends, interfacing with my own husband, and some of the challenges he's faced with at work. And it just makes you realize how much this kind of conversation is needed. Wondering why we hadn't been having this conversation all along, but also being in those spaces, like you're saying, some of these conferences where we've had an opportunity to interface, seeing maybe not all organizations are responding at this particular point in time, but there are leaders who are beginning to get it. Um, Again, the idea of treating the individual and then putting them back in a system that doesn't work, it becomes cyclical. And so this is something that is absolutely necessary. We have to keep having the conversation. We do need therapists, like you say, but there has to be a more effective approach. I remember we went to Safety on the Edge in Berkeley, and when we were opening up with our panel discussion, I remember our host, she said about the village that had there was a cliff that people kept falling over. And she said, everybody got together in the community and they're like, okay, we're going to have to do something about this. And so they decided to build a hospital at the bottom of the cliff. And every time I hear that story, I mean, it's tragic, but I think it's just so, there's some things that we can do before having to put a hospital at the bottom of the cliff, before having to send people to see us. There are some things that companies can do. And it's good to see that leaders are beginning to get it, and they're becoming more vested in wanting to know what that looks like. But yes, it is for me, safety 2.0. That's the next frontier. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You raise an interesting point about this being safety 2.0. I think that this might be even safety foundational, because if you get this part right, a lot of the physical issues that people are having, and Andrew, I'm sure you've seen this. I know I have. A lot of the physical manifestation of the injury. So why did the person back the truck into something? It's because of what was going on in their mind, how they were feeling at the time. Why did they drop that tool? Why did they scream at their child? Why did they, all of that, it was, and a lot of it is preventable. It doesn't have to be that particular way. It is not some, internal psychopathic thingy. No, it is an environmental thing. It is just like catching a cold or the flu or whatever. It gets airborne. And it's just in the environment. And so many places have normalized the fact, oh, it's just stressful here. Well, why? What do you mean it's just stressful here? How come? Why does it have to be? Well, not really. That's just the way we do it here. Well, so I had, and of course you all know I had the opportunity to travel to Australia. It's, last week based on our recording, a couple of months back based on when we released. But anyway, it was so wonderful to be in a place where I didn't have to explain what this psychological health and safety thing was, where people are just, matter of fact, they put this law in place about 3 years ago that kind of forces people that might not be interested to kind of do it anyway. But see, because we don't have that stick here. Hopefully folks are finding the carrots. And so, the question I have is, though the U.S. is a little behind, in what ways do you see, I think, George, you kind of, hinted at it, but I want to go a little deeper. What ways do you see the conversation about psychological health and safety growing and getting stronger, at least in your travels? And Matt, I'll start with you on that one. What do you think?
Yeah, a part of the retreat is uh, a training in biomimicry, right? And biomimicry, I know I'm not going to get it 100% correct, but it's us observing nature and finding solutions through what we've seen or what we learned from nature, from how the ecosystems can actually heal themselves. And so learning how to utilize all of the things we see in nature to then solve some of the issues we have, whether it's medical, mental, emotional, physical, structural. There's a lot of examples. And the reason why I use that is because there is a trend in language in our culture towards going back to nature, right? And I sometimes it bothers me because I feel like we're being giving the thing that we knew was a solution from the onset, right? Like, for example, there has been a trend in grounding in the mental health space, right? And grounding sometimes can be just a mental grounding, but it's also going outside and putting your foot down on soil, right? Making sure you can actually connect with the earth. And so a part of us being in Costa Rica is grounding. We walk on the beach barefoot. We're outside in nature at least 40% of the trip, right? And so a lot of it is the solutions that we already knew was good for us. And I see this trend of us getting back to nature as a solution for our mental wellness, physical wellness. Even there's an uptrend in natural remedies as well. And so these are things that I've been seeing as a trend towards getting us back to our ultimate, psychological health and safety.
Absolutely. Georgia, what are you seeing? What gives you hope that the conversation is growing?
Again, having the opportunity to be in some of these forums, and seeing, I have to say, especially, I've been engaging the corporate space since 2021, being in these kinds of settings. And the most recent conference that you and I went to, Safety on the Edge, these were predominantly senior leaders that were present, and they're vested. Again, it's not every company across the board, but companies are getting it. Um, they want to know more. It's not that they don't want to do anything. It's just that they probably just don't know how. Because of course, the bigger question is always, well, what's the legalities around mental health and people's personal businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're always having to reinforce the idea. We're not calling you to become mental health professionals. We're just asking you to be a little bit more aware of your environment and address those factors that you have more control over. So I see an increase in that kind of a conversation. In fact, I'm going to be at the ASSP's Safety Expo next month, and I'm going to be part of a panel where we're talking about psychological safety and suicide prevention. So then the other factor that you have is that we're in a position where we don't have a choice, right? So so I know some of the panelists that are going to be a part of that session. They are from the construction industry, and everybody knows construction is one of those industries in which the suicide rate is extremely high. And so we have to have the conversations. I also think that there has been a significant generational shift around mental health and well-being. Um, there are lots, the people that's coming into the work environment or who have been in the work environment for the last few years, such as the millennials and the Gen Zs. They're very adamant about wanting companies to ensure that mental health is very much a part of what's being tended to. Um, Not like us Gen Xers and boomers who, we learn to push through things and we learn to push things down and stuff things and try to separate ourselves from our personal lives from work. But they're adamant about leadership putting infrastructure and systems in place to make sure that as you're tending to my physical health, you're also tending to my mental health. And I think there's been a significant shift since COVID-19. I think perhaps because so many people were impacted by COVID-19, there's a cultural change. People are a little bit more open, having dialogue. You have a lot more influencers on social media who are opening it up. Sometimes it's not necessarily for the best because now people kind of wear their mental health issues like a badge. But the flip side to it is that we're normalizing the conversation more. And so on the ground level, there are significant changes happening and it's moving up into the corporate setting. So definitely there is a change. It's slow and it's tedious, but it's happening.
Right. Andrew, what's your thoughts? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I would echo that, Georgia. It's slow and tedious and painstaking from we're the folks that have the inside scoop on this, and we know how valuable it can be. And I think it's definitely kind of painful to watch organizations continue to toil in other areas and really dump a lot of resources into things that we know really aren't evidence-based practices or aren't going to have the intended consequence. But I say all that to say that there definitely is a change. I mean, this is a conversation in public safety that was almost not occurring at all, 20, 25 years ago. And now it literally dominates the conversation when it comes to issues facing, police, fire, EMS, and, folks that work in sort of just any high stress environment, that this is a mainstay part of that conversation. And that's all kind of shifted in 20, 25 years. So I think we have that awareness piece going. Now we have to be ready with real practical, tangible solutions on how to answer those corporate folks and whoever else that are showing up to say all right, we agree, this is a problem. Where do we go from here? And so hopefully we're positioning ourselves now to be in that space to provide those answers when they come kind of calling for them.
Yeah, that opportunity that is out there for all of us. Andrew, like you, I think it's really important that those of us who are really kind of into this, that we continue to be available, be prepared, to give people real stuff, not charlatan type stuff, because again, we're a country that's made its hay on, if I can make money doing something, I'm just going to go out there and do it. And I think, I think there are many folks who are doing a great job. No question. This is not to throw rocks at everybody, but I think that in the next couple of years, you're going to have a lot of folks jump on the psych health and safety bandwagon with stuff that's not really grounded in anything. I mean, it's not. And again, I want folks to kind of go along, but it's to one of the presenters that Professor Rob Briner when I was over in in Australia talked about these evidence-based practices, stuff that's got some facts behind it, not something that somebody just kind of invented last week and is trying to hawk it to whoever will buy it. But there's some evidence behind it. And but I also like to say, and we're going to pass the mic here in just a second, but also various different kinds of evidence, not just, this really narrow box, but evidence from various cultures and various occupations and various, interests. There is evidence to back up, the work that all of you all are doing in your various different, sectors. I mean, the public sector tends to lag behind the private sector in most things that are safety related. And a lot of the corporate leadership are just there to make money, and then we do have a bit of a crisis around men in general, but particularly men of color. So there's facts to back up, the things that each of you are doing, and we just have to have more opportunities for folks to get it and to see that there's a better way. I mean, and we're moving the right direction. We just got to keep it going and keep conversations like this happening. So I thought it would be interesting, as I, often have these. I do a lot of the Q&A stuff of the guests, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of do a pass the mic thing. And so what we're going to do for the remainder of this conversation is kind of pass the mic to have each of you ask a question to all of us. So I'll kind of take my hat off as a host and kind of join the conversation. I'm really as interested in this as I was in the other part, because I really want to hear, you all's individual thoughts, because I certainly respect the work that you all are doing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pass the mic similar to the way we don't really have an instrument to pass along like many cultures do, but we'll symbolically pass the conversation from Georgia to Andrew to Matt in that order, to ask a question of all of us, and then we'll kind of engage in that one, then move to the next one, and then we'll see how much time we have after that. So Georgia, you're first up.
Sure. So I'll say, Dr. Andrew, I want to be you when I grow up. But I definitely, I wanted to start with you because I would love to get some more insight into what is it that you're observing. As we're saying, we're noticing that it's a slow and tedious process, but there are changes that you're observing as you work with organizations. So what in particular that you see happening that's more of a trend, like you're seeing more than one company actually getting on board with that? Are they receptive to what it is that we're talking about? What's the level of receptivity? And what are some of the changes that you see them embracing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it depends on their approach. But, sort of generically, I think that there is a couple things happening sort of simultaneously, like I talked about earlier, with that awareness level sort of just increasing across the board. But with that, I feel like we're starting to see the realization that even whether it's money motivated or whatever the case is, we're starting to see a realization that there's a strong return on investment. So for, with the safety background, right? Like you probably did a bunch of root cause analysis. You put together a great training program to address the findings of an incident investigation, maybe did some engineering controls or whatever the case was. I think it's part of that slow and steady churn is that leaders are starting to realize there's a really tangible return on investment when they invest a little bit into this area. Whether it's just from the assessment perspective and developing interventions, or, starting to have honest conversations within their teams, building trust, and maybe measuring some of these constructs like psychological safety, like trust or belonging. All of these things are, have validated measures for that people can actually assess an organization for. And now we're starting to see them kind of get curious about them because that ROI factor is in play. And they realize, like, hey, if we have trust, our injury rate goes down. If we have belonging and psychological safety, our profits go up. How do we create more of that then? And I think we're starting now, as that awareness is transitioning over into something more, tangible. I think we're starting to see that shift of people getting that piece of it as well, and that might be helping motivate folks to kind of look at this area and ask, all right, what do we do, or what can we do to make an investment here?
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Dr. D, I want to hear a little bit about, I know you kind of touched on it somewhat, your experience in Australia. You were also, was it New Zealand?
Yes.
We're behind, obviously, here in the United States. There's no doubt.
Right.
But I'm curious. I'd like to know, what is it that you observed when you were in Australia and New Zealand that you think is, I'm not going to say it's an easy sell here, but people may probably be a little bit more responsive to taking some of these steps in the United States because it's not going to cost too much, whether it's in terms of monetary or effort.
Well, the thing that was, I was there for 2 weeks, and it was glorious to be in a community of people who, like I said, I didn't have to explain what this.
They spoke your language.
Yeah. They didn't quite speak the language because some of the Australian accent, I was having difficulty sometimes when they talk really fast, and there's some. I don't do it very well, but some of the letters that they don't use that I use. So anyway, there's some of that. But anyway, one of the things I was really impressed by, as a matter of fact, one of the stops that we made on what we call the road show was to one of the largest. It was it's called Cole. I'll call their name. It's Coles. That's what it's called, and they are a huge. Equivalent of a supermarket. They say they're a match where they are a merger between Walmart and Whole Foods. They've got kind of market dominance there. I think there are only two major retailers of food there. Kohl's is one of them. The other is Woolworths. There's Woolworths is still over there, but I don't think it's the same, but it's just the same name. But anyway, we actually went to their corporate headquarters. That's where the presentation was. And it was this fascinating building with all these folks kind of, scurrying about. And it felt healthy, and it was bright and airy. And you walk in, there's all this healthy food in there. It just has this kind of, it's hard to explain. You kind of have to be in it, but you know it when you see it. And to have a big corporation like this, we had another couple, global corporations that were present there that were talking about the work that they're doing. And it was just kind of second nature stuff for them. And the thing that's encouraging about that is when I realize that some people are in business to make money. I get that. But the problem is, and this is a problem, not all great businesses are great employers. That's the issue. Is they forget that a business and an employer are not the same thing. You can have a great business idea and be a crappy employer. Because to be an employer requires attention to humans. The business idea is great, but you got to deal with humans. And I just seeing these big organizations that are getting it, that was good. And that lets me know that some folks from the U.S. will look at that and go, well, if it's working for them, why wouldn't it work for me?
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about just the environment. Look, the the aesthetics or the visual. I worked with Kalila, we did some work for L'Oreal in New Jersey, and I'm fascinated with the building in which they operate, because when you step into, so you have all the office spaces and the labs and all of that stuff going on, but you turn the corner and you get to their lunchroom. It's literally like stepping into a whole different world. It's as though you're not at work. Whoever designed it, it's amazing. So just changing the environment, I think it makes a world of a difference. So thank you for that, Dr. D. And then Matt, I was thinking, what is it that I wanted to ask you? I think we know, and I'm not trying to be stereotypical in my statement, but we do know that oftentimes, especially in our Black communities, men are not necessarily inclined to go to therapy, right? I'm hoping that that's changing, but not necessarily inclined. And so if we understand that it's not, when people come to work, it's not just the work environment in and of itself that may be creating stress or added stress to them. They're coming in predisposed with their own stuff. And the fact that they're not necessarily inclined, or there's a lot of stigma to going to seek help. How do you get men to be more open? Because to be more open, because yes, it's almost like if they're not willing to, if they're not necessarily as open, or there are lots of stigma again surrounding seeking support, and then you're compounding work. We can't necessarily ask work to be responsible for your personal stuff, right? So we're asking organizational leaders to be receptive, but they don't have oversight over what I do outside of my home. So in all fairness, how do we get our men in through the door?
Wow, how much time you got? This is a good one. So the one of the things that I know I have to do is I have to be the model that I would love to see in more men, right? And so, how do I take care of my wellness? How do I show up well? And wellness isn't just mental, it's emotional, it's physical, it's spiritual, it's familial, it's financial. And so an object lesson must be seen, something that's different. Right? We had examples on television where they would show the Black family more intact. They would show the Black man more intact mentally, emotionally, but those examples are far and few in between now. And so, as a mental health professional that specializes in Black male wellness, I have to be well, right? And so, a part of me being well is being selfish, right? Making sure that how I allocate my time considers me first. And that's with everything. That means before I step outside the house, it has to be valuable for my wellness. And then I think about everyone else secondary, and I make that choice because in my wellness is when I can most impact the population that I would love to serve. In my wellness, I create the environment that is easier for them to tap into their wellness. So my job is to not just meet them where they are, but to learn how to create an ecosystem of safety around them, right? And that starts in our first encounter. And a lot of what I hear from my male clients is, "Man, where have you been?" And I tell them, I'm here. What I tell them is that I'm here now, right? I'm here now, and it's not just me. I point them in the direction of other resources that are there because I think you said it earlier, Georgia. There's a trend for influencers to wear their mental illness as a badge of honor, and it looks like a pseudo vulnerability. But what's the work that's being done behind the cameras, right? When the cameras are off, right? Where does the wellness really seen? And so for me, it was a difficult decision for my family and I because we're not very public, right? We're not very public, but a part of it is being public. A part of it is showing my family. A part of it is showing that and speaking on my marriage and speaking on the wellness of my kids and speaking on what I've done. Not to say that it's a one size fit all, but to say that there are alternate ways of approaching your mental and emotional wellness, right? And so it's learning how to be well myself, right? And it is a learning curve because I'm still learning based on the levels of trauma that I was exposed to, based on some of the experiences I've had in my household, based on the work stress that I've carried, working for certain corporations and entities. And so me practicing it makes it easier for me to then deliver it to the individual, to the couple, to the family, and then to schools, the institution, and so forth. And so that's the short answer. All right. So that's what I can give you at this time right now.
No, I appreciate that. And what I hear fundamentally you saying is that it's not that they don't want it, it's just that they've not seen it modeled. And so people are looking for examples.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Dr. D, back to you, sir.
Andrew, what do you have
All
to?
right, I'll take a one size fits all approach. So for everybody, especially since there are therapists, clinicians here amongst us. So for me, it's always I want to say always, I think when I do psychometric assessments or something, I see symptoms of what is happening at the system level, symptoms of what's happening, at the system level. And, I try to take a systems level approach then, but I'm curious, so kind of a blind spot for me is sort of that individual piece of it at times. And so I'm curious from you all, what do you think is the most important piece at an individual level with somebody coming into an organization that we can do to connect with that person and help connect them to help them feel connected to the organization?
I'd like to go first. I love this question. I absolutely love this question because it's so layered. A part of what I do is a fatherhood training, right? And what we teach fathers is that they are a pivotal part of the ecosystem even before the child gets into the space that creates wellness for that child, even in utero, right? And so if you think of a person coming into a workspace, you have to think of that workspace, the health of that workspace prior to that person coming into that space, right? What has been that ecosystem before this person comes in? Is it an ecosystem of wellness that can sustain or elevate this person's wellness so that they can be more productive? And so, what we know about the outcomes of a healthy father in their ecosystem, limitless. It impacts social, emotional, physical, financial, even, right? But the detriment of a father being absent or not well in that ecosystem has something called the father factor, where you can trace almost every crime in our society back to absent father or a father that's not well, And so when you think about how the individual impacts the ecosystem, you also have to think about how the ecosystem impacts the individual. So coming into that ecosystem, we also have to assess, is this person well, right? Before we let a person into an ecosystem where they might be the domino effect to bring that ecosystem backwards, we have to examine their wellness as well. And then it's also the health of the ecosystem as well. So it's both and, how do we take care of the individual even before, because the person may still be valuable, but may be dealing with some psychological issues that if they take care of those issues, same thing with the father, before you become a father, or a husband, there are certain things that you may have to detach from or learn to get better in so that when you start your ecosystem, you're ready. And so if you're going into a workspace, you may have the book knowledge or the smarts to do that task, but are you well adjusted to be a part of a healthy ecosystem? Or are you going to be someone that comes in and create damage? And so it's kind of both working on themselves.
Yeah. I I think about the U.S. Surgeon General. They put out that framework on workplace mental health and well-being. And one of the things they suggest is that the work environment itself could be an engine of change when it comes on to promoting well-being, right? The reality is, as we all know this, and we've been alluding to it, is the idea that there are people who come into the work environment already dealing with their own issues, already probably dealing with anxiety, depression, etc., etc. And the work environment itself is either going to do one of two things. It's either going to amplify the experience they're having, or it could be a source of influence, getting people to perhaps start considering well, maybe I probably do need to do something about this on my own, because there's only so much the work is not responsible for um, putting you in therapy. That's something that you have to do for yourself individually. But the environment can create the desire or the impetus for you wanting to go get that support. So, we think of the basic things that we most organizations have in place. We talk about EAP, the EAP program, and a part of EAP is that it focuses on, you may get a few sessions on counseling to address any stresses that you might be dealing with, any issues that may be impacting your mental health. I think companies can do a better job of maybe don't just as have that as a you just have a tick on that, like it's just ticking the box, right? Maybe make an extra effort to have more conversations around this, because I think a lot of times employees don't even know these resources are available. And I work for an EAP company. I do presentations on their behalf, and so it's amazing some of the stuff that they have, right? But your employees do not know. They probably hear about it at onboarding, and then they never hear of it again. And so I think companies probably can take an extra step where it's not just making sure that we're ticking the box to say that we have this, but really building a campaign around it consistently, that the workers are aware that these resources are available and they leverage that. And it might be the reason for them wanting to use the resources. It could start off because of work related stress, but then they realize that, oh, I have marital issues, or I'm having issues with my teen, or I'm having personal life transition changes. And they want to start making more use of those resources that are available. Companies can do a better job of that. But of course, if the companies themselves will have to be, well-being has to be something that's like cornerstone or central, where it's not just, again, it's an add-on, but it's throughout the culture of the organization itself. So I don't know if that helps.
And I'll wrap up the question again. Shameless plug.
Let's
Shameless,
go.
shameless
Yes,
plug.
yes.
The many
Shameless plug, Dr. B. Hey!
So many organizations were built from their foundation to harm people. That's because if you aren't affirmative in your effort to not harm people, you're going to harm people because you don't know that you're harming people sometimes. There's not enough conversation, there's not an awareness that I'm doing. I'm not saying that there are a bunch of bad people out there out to, do people wrong. But because we are different, when I create something, it works really well for me. It just doesn't work well for everybody. And so when we create these business ideas, we say, come into this business idea and work with me. I need to know how then and I've heard it said more than once, how do we create an environment where we can contribute our best? Not how can I get my best out of it, or just you get your best. And that's where the issues are. It's just there's not enough balance. We want the skill, we want the competence of people, but it's like we want them to, as much as we say bring your whole self, we don't want their whole self. We want leave that part at home. I can't. It's me. If you want me, this comes with it. My depression comes with it. My anxiety comes with it. My issues with my children come with it. My issue with that all comes. That's a part of me, and because in our system in this country, because we do not have a healthcare system that's accessible to everybody, we have a system that you have to access it through work. Through work, that's the only way I can get it. Then it is incumbent upon work to not make it worse for me, for your, so it'll cost you less. But it's also when I am exposed to things that you cannot control, some of it is on you recognizing that the hazard exists, just like the chemicals and just like the bad chair and the lifting, they don't have a lifting device. It is making sure that you recognize that there are hazards that are endemic to the thing that we're doing. We can't get rid of it. It's not going to just go away. We can't wish it away, pray it away, sing it away. It is a part of humanness. And we should expect that people come with issues. We should expect that people come with challenges. And if they don't, they're going to have some when they get here, because none of us are perfect. And so that's Andrew, back to that original question. Those are the things that we can do organizationally, and then we can be honest with people when they come into our organizations to tell them, again, if you're going to do this job, there's some things about this job we need you to be prepared for. We can't control it. We don't know when it's going to come up, but it probably will. And here's what they are. And here's how you can stay healthy, can stay safe, can stay contributing, because we have done this assessment on our own. We brought in, we may not have all the expertise, but we brought it in. We know what these hazards are. We're going to make sure that we protect you from them as much as we possibly can.
That was great. That was all great. Thank you all for that.
Yeah, it's on you now, Matt.
Yeah, I have some hard act to follow. Um, what I teach is how to prioritize wellness, and so I have to make sure that I'm practicing that. And one of the things that I say to help me prioritize wellness is I actually say my wellness is my priority, right? So if I can say my wellness is my priority, then I have to say, well, what are the ingredients to my wellness? Joy, right? And so then I have to go further. What brings me joy? Nature, right? And so what I have to say now is nature is my priority, right? So how do I incorporate nature weekly, at least, into my life to then prioritize my joy, which then prioritize my wellness, right? So in a similar way, how do you prioritize your wellness, and what are those codes for you that can increase and maintain the wellness that you have? Because listen, you guys are doing the heavy lifting out there. How do you take care of yourselves?
Well, I think I'll jump in on this one first, and I would love to hear what the other panelists have to say. But Matt, similar to you, George, I think you may have a similar story. Andrew, you have it based on the move that you've made. I took control of my own wellness, for certain about 5 years ago myself. I said, I'm going to prioritize my own wellness, particularly my mental and emotional health over everything, because if I'm not well, when I woke up one morning and was having a panic attack, I'd never had one before. I knew that look, and I've had way too many birthdays to keep dealing with that kind of stuff. And I don't know where that could have put me. Not only I could not be alive at all. And I decided that it was more important for me to be mental and emotionally well than everything else. So there's some things that I don't do, some places I don't go, some environments I don't go into, because, and I'm not saying that environment in and of itself is horrible, mean, unsafe, that it's just unsafe for me. And again, that's what this, that latest round of therapy helped me do, is not be angry with other people because it works for them. It just doesn't work for me. That doesn't mean it's bad. That just means it's not an environment. I'm not a drinker. I'll drink a glass of wine if it's really sweet. But I'm not saying that those who, will drink whatever they drink are bad people. I'm saying it doesn't work for me. And we can still have a relationship around all the other things that we agree with. And I'll go with you to a bar, but I probably won't have the alcoholic drink that you have. Again, it is my mental and emotional and psychological safety is so important to me that it comes first. And everything else has to come after that, because if I'm broken and if I'm down and if I am not safe myself, I can't be helpful to other people.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Dr. D on that one. I reframe this concept of selfishness. Matt, you and I know we work with clients, and that's one of the areas where people struggle with most of the time. And I know where we get our definition of selfishness from. But being selfless means for me, or selfish, however you want to put it, I can only be my best to you when I am my best, right? And so I have to invest time and energy into that. And I think it was probably 2020, I made the decision that I'm going to switch to a 4-day work week. 2020 was very tough because we had so many clients coming in as a result of COVID. Everybody was home, so all the crazy stuff was happening. And people were just, they were like, we need to go find a therapist. And I found myself, I think I worked for 7 months straight without taking a break. And I was working 6 days and I got sick. And it dawned on me that, oh my God, I haven't taken a vacation in months and this is not healthy. So I made the decision I'm not going to, we call it in Jamaica, nobody's going to pop me down. I don't want to pop down, right? So I made the decision that no, I'm going to have to switch to 4 days. And it doesn't matter if the sky is falling, unless it's a real emergency. I do not see clients on a Friday, period. Rest is the word for me. And rest could mean anything. And I've been actively embracing that for the last 5 years.
Matt, this is a tough question. I loved how you phrased it earlier about learning to be selfish in a way and kind of like assigning value to what you put time into. I think that's kind of where it is for me, and it is always a constant balancing act. I'm currently in a fairly high stress environment, but I try to take stock of what's actually happening, and sort of reframe it so that it doesn't seem, because it's really not that big. Try to not make it seem as big as I could make it seem, and keep it in check. Georgia, to your point, one of the things that I'm offered here is the ability to have a compressed schedule and be very flexible. And so at first it was hard for me to take that every other Friday because I would allow myself to get sucked in. And nobody was telling me to. Nobody was encouraging me like, Andrew, you're not working enough. You should be here more. I just couldn't control the urge to feel like I needed to be ever present. And so I have spent the past few months really all right, these 3 days, there's nothing work related happening, to try to give myself that brain space to get away from it so that when I do come back on a Monday, it actually feels like it was a refreshing break away and that I'm kind of reinvigorated and coming back to that. But it is definitely, Dr. D, as you alluded to earlier, the perfectionists here, all trying to get their questions ahead of time. It's definitely a struggle for me to sort of always make that call and to make sure to basically let myself know on an ongoing basis, this is what's right. This is the right thing to do. The other thing is wrong. And if I can frame it that way, for me, it kind of helps to be I'm being sucked in to do the wrong thing. I need to create that balance.
That's good.
And in addition to, I know I'm setting an example to my entire division. So I don't want them to see me sending an email on the day I'm supposed to be off, because then they're going to be like, well, if he's doing that, maybe I should do that too. And so I try to be mindful of the example I'm setting at the same time.
Yeah, man, all great answers. And I saw what I did earlier, Andrew. You were trying to wrap things up, and I just jumped right there with my question because I was so excited to get to it. So my apologies for interrupting your wisdom. But what I want to offer to all of you is just this one last thing: is that your wellness is what I tell my clients when we build enough rapport. I tell them that your wellness does not offend me, right? And what that means for me is that sometimes when others see us well, it bothers them because we don't match the ecosystem that they're used to. And so I have to reassure people that when they're well, it's not offending. Your wellness does not offend me, Andrew. For you to be well in your space, in your workspace, that's not offensive. Same thing for you, Dr. Daniels. For you to prioritize your mental and emotional health does not offend me. Same thing for you, Georgia. The work that you do, all right, and we know that work that you do, right, needs that balance, right? During the pandemic, it wouldn't have been offensive for you to take a month off, right?
I know.
You know, Understand what you and one of the things that allowed me to step away from dealing with insurance is because how they managed our wellness during the pandemic. Most other healthcare professionals were being compensated 2 or 3 times more, but none of that was, I didn't get any
Yeah,
extra,
they even cut. They even cut.
right? So your wellness, just to close my part out, does not offend me. And that's it.
Absolutely. Well, while we could take this for another couple of hours, I want to give our listeners, a little bit of a respite from this extensive and outstanding conversation. But as we close, I just want each of you to closing thought, and then how people can get a hold of you, reach out to you. If they would certainly like to do so. Again, so Georgia, we'll start with you first. How, closing thought, and how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Sure. So, closing thoughts. I'm hoping that lots of leaders are going to be listening to this podcast. We, I think it's important for leaders to know that there are people in the community, experts in the community that you can partner with. You don't need to do the work in a silo. We're not asking you to become mental health experts. You leave that to me and Matt as practitioners, and of course Dr. Andrew, who will come in and help you get your organization together. But partner with the experts in the community. It's going to go a long way. I think oftentimes it's because it's not that we don't want to do things, we just don't know how to do it. And there are people who have that information. So I'm active on LinkedIn at Georgia Bryce. You could search for me, you'll find me. And I'd love to connect. I mean, follow me on LinkedIn, send me an inbox if you need to. But thank you so much, Dr. Daniels, for this experience.
Absolutely. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I just echoing George's comments. I feel like there's a lot of people in the space. To that point, check credentials. People should have something, and they should be able to. One thing I tell clients, which sometimes goes like a Led Zeppelin, but if you're not willing to act on the information I provide you, this is not going to be a good working relationship. Like, will all cause more harm than good. I assure you of that. And so make sure that you're working with folks that are kind of brutally honest about things, because that's who you're going to want to partner with when you go down this road. And similarly, you can, Andrew Holter, you can find me on LinkedIn or online at a whole different host of places, and certainly reach out if you're interested.
Absolutely. Matt?
Yep. Closing thought is just to prioritize your wellness. Whatever that looks like for you is what it is for you, right? And your wellness should never offend anyone around you. If it does, then that means they should not be in your life. I'm sorry, right? It's deuces, right? And how I can be reached, of course, on LinkedIn, on all platforms, Mat Jeanius, MatJeanius. And please engage with me. Sometimes people have follow-up questions. If you can't ask on LinkedIn, find me on social media, send a DM. I love answering questions that people have about all things wellness. I specialize in Black male wellness and relational intimacy. Thank you.
And I'd like to just thank the three of you. It's therapeutic for me to talk with folks who get it, and I continue to seek community of people who get it. Andrew, to your point, I really am not all that interested in trying to convince people that this is a thing. I'm not. I mean, if you don't believe it, if you think that the way that you're doing it is getting you what you want, I keep doing that. But I think that there are market forces that are driving people to consider that maybe if this workplace wasn't so stressful, and maybe if we cared more for the human beings that we brought in, and maybe if I prioritize the psychological health and safety of the people that are a part of this organization, then we would make more money and we would have lower turnover and we'd have better performance. So I'm looking for those folks, those who don't get fined. I mean, there's a thing You have two choices with an organization and with organisms. You either evolve or you become extinct. The choice is yours. So, but again, thank you so much for all of your contributions. And again, it's a pleasure to be in a growing community of people. So I was telling folks in Australia that I am encouraged that we may be a little bit behind, but we can catch up quick. We can catch up quick because there are folks just like each and every one of you who understand what it's going to take for us to be psychologically healthy and safe at work. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope that something you heard will bring you back to a future episode. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.